Most people fail in life not because they lack talent or ambition, but because they misunderstand power. They assume the world rewards fairness, kindness, transparency, and good intentions. They assume success comes from working hard, being honest, and waiting to be recognized. But Niccolò Machiavelli saw reality differently. He saw that human nature is driven by self-interest, emotion, insecurity, ambition, fear, envy, and desire. He saw that people pretend to be noble while acting out of convenience. He saw that politics, business, relationships, and social life are governed by hidden agendas, strategic deception, and the subtle manipulation of appearances. To him, power did not belong to the strongest or the smartest. It belonged to the person who understood human nature without illusions. And this is where your transformation begins, not in becoming ruthless or cruel, but in learning to see people as they truly are, not as you wish they were. Power begins with clarity. Influence begins with understanding. Control begins with the ability to step outside emotion and observe behavior as a strategist. It's not a participant. Machiavelli believed that if you want to rise, you must stop assuming others think like you. Not everyone seeks fairness. Not everyone keeps promises. Not everyone respects loyalty. The world is full of masks, and Machiavelli's brilliance was in teaching people to read the truth beneath them. When you think like a Machiavellian, you stop being surprised by betrayal. You stop being shocked when people prioritize themselves. You stop expecting rational behavior from emotional minds. Instead, you anticipate it. You prepare for it. You use it to your advantage. You become a strategist in a world of impulsive players. Most people live reactively. They respond to events as they unfold. But Machiavellian thinkers live proactively. They predict events before they occur. They don't merely react to power dynamics. They shape them. To think like Machiavelli is to understand that intentions matter far less than outcomes. People judge results, not motivations. They admire strength, not purity. They follow confidence, not promises. A Machiavellian mind does not waste time defending its reputation through words. It defends it through results. It knows that moral purity is useless if it leads to powerlessness. It knows that being good is admirable, but being effective is essential. The world rewards effectiveness. The world elevates those who can navigate complexity, influence emotions, and strategically position themselves in environments filled with unpredictability. To think like Machiavelli is to embrace reality as it is, harsh, competitive, political, emotional, and driven by power dynamics most people prefer to ignore. One of Machiavelli's greatest psychological insights is this: people are guided more by emotion than logic. They make decisions based on fear, desire, insecurity, ego, and appearance. Logic comes later, often used only to justify what emotion has already decided. If you understand this, you gain immense power. You stop trying to win arguments with facts and start winning through perception. You stop focusing on truth alone and start focusing on the narrative people want to believe. In Machiavellian psychology, perception is more influential than reality. If people believe you are strong, they treat you with respect, even if you hold no formal authority. If they perceive you as confident, they follow you even without proof. If they see you as indispensable, they support you even if they disagree with you. The world is not controlled by truth. It is controlled by belief. Thinking like Machiavelli requires emotional control, the ability to remain calm while others panic, strategic while others react, observant while others speak. Emotional people are easy to manipulate because their reactions reveal their weaknesses. Calm people are dangerous because their stillness hides their intentions. When you control your emotions, you control the room. You decide the pace of conversations. You shape the direction of conflict. You maintain leverage even when others believe they have one. Machiavelli understood that self-control is the foundation of external control. If you cannot rule yourself, you cannot rule anything. Another core element of Machiavellian thinking is the strategic use of the mask. Machiavelli never suggested being evil, only being unreadable. If people know your intentions, they can resist you. If they know your weaknesses, they can exploit you. If they know your desires, they can manipulate you. The mask protects you. It allows you to observe without being observed. It lets you gather information while revealing nothing. People trust masks more than raw honesty because masks reflect what they want to see. A Machiavellian mind understands that authenticity must be selective, not constant. You reveal parts of yourself strategically, choosing what benefits you in the moment. Power is not about being known. It is about being unpredictable. Machiavelli also taught that power requires the ability to act with decisive clarity. Most people hesitate, drown in doubt, overthink, or seek permission. But a Machiavellian mind understands that hesitation is death in the world of influence. People respect decisiveness because it signals strength. It telegraphs confidence and competence. When you make decisions quickly and with certainty, others assume you know something they don't. This perception alone gives you an edge. In any hierarchy, business, social groups, politics, relationships, the decisive rise and the hesitant follow. Another Machiavellian principle is understanding that loyalty is conditional, not absolute. People are loyal to their needs, not their promises. They remain loyal as long as you fulfill something they value: security, support, status, opportunity, validation, or protection. When those needs shift, so does their loyalty. This is not betrayal. It is human nature. When you accept this, you stop being surprised when people change. You stop placing blind trust in anyone. You start building alliances based on aligned incentives, not emotional expectations. Machiavelli understood that loyal followers are not born, they are maintained. Thinking like Machiavelli also means recognizing that conflict is not something to fear, it is something to manage. Conflict reveals intentions, exposes alliances, and clarifies power structures. Those who fear conflict surrender their influence to those who are willing to wield it. Machiavelli believed that controlled conflict strengthens authority because it shows people where you stand. It demonstrates strength, resolve, and boundaries. When you handle conflict calmly and assertively, you gain respect. When you avoid conflict at all costs, you invite exploitation. A Machiavellian mind studies motives constantly. It does not take words at face value. It observes behavior, patterns, micro-reactions, inconsistencies, and contradictions. It asks, what does this person really want? What are they afraid of? What need are they trying to protect? What outcome are they pursuing? Once you understand someone's motives, you understand their future actions. And if you understand their future actions, you control the dynamic. Finally, thinking like Machiavelli requires strategic ambiguity. You must never let people fully understand your next move. Predictability is weakness. When others know what you will do, they can block you, undermine you, or manipulate you. Ambiguity gives you room to maneuver. It keeps others guessing, cautious, and off balance. It makes you harder to challenge and easier to respect. Machiavelli believed that power belongs to those who think several moves ahead and reveal none of them. To think like Machiavelli is to transform into someone who cannot be easily controlled, someone who cannot be easily read, someone who cannot be easily manipulated, someone who sees through motives and masks, someone who understands the psychology of influence and uses it with precision. This is not about becoming ruthless. It is about becoming aware, strategic, and unshakable in a world driven by hidden power dynamics. Asterisk. To think like Machiavelli, you must first understand what drives human beings at their core. Not the idealized version of humanity taught in classrooms and motivational speeches, but the real, primal emotional forces that shape people's decisions, desires, fears, and relationships. Machiavelli believed that predictable patterns govern human behavior. He believed that people are not as mysterious as they pretend to be. They repeat the same psychological tendencies across generations, across cultures, and across environments. And the person who understands these tendencies gains an enormous advantage: the ability to predict behavior before it happens. When you understand people, you stop being manipulated. When you understand people, you stop being surprised by their actions. When you understand people, you can guide, influence, and control social dynamics with strategic precision. One of the first laws of human nature is self-interest. People act based on what benefits them emotionally, financially, socially, or psychologically. Even acts of kindness often contain hidden motives: the desire to feel good, to appear generous, to gain approval, or to build emotional leverage. This truth is not cynical. It is realistic. Machiavelli taught that understanding self-interest allows you to predict behavior, because people will always choose the option that satisfies their internal needs. Once you identify those needs, you understand their loyalty, their fears, their weaknesses, and their future actions. The mistake most people make is assuming others will act based on logic or morality. But human beings act based on desire and fear. Everything else is rationalization. Another law of human nature is the dominance of emotion over logic. People are ruled by their feelings: fear, pride, envy, desire, insecurity, attraction, and resentment. Logic comes later, used only to justify emotional decisions. If you want to understand someone's behavior, do not ask, "What is the logical choice?" Ask instead, "What emotion controls this person?" A fearful person will avoid risk. A prideful person will defend their ego. An insecure person will attach themselves to anyone who validates them. An envious person will sabotage those who threaten them. Machiavellian psychology reveals that when you understand the emotional force driving someone, you gain access to their internal map. Their choices become predictable. Their reactions become manageable. Their influence becomes containable. Machiavelli also understood the law of appearance over reality. Human beings do not respond to truth. They respond to perception. People choose leaders based on confidence, not competence. They trust those who look strong, not those who are strong. They believe narratives more than facts. They judge based on what they see, not what is real. This is why appearances are one of the most powerful tools in the world of influence. When you control perception, you control behavior. When you shape how others see you, you shape how they react to you. And when you master the art of appearances, confidence, body language, tone, reputation, and timing, you gain leverage, without ever having to reveal your true capabilities. Another principle is the predictability of insecurity. Insecurity is one of the most common human emotions, and it drives many destructive behaviors. Insecure people compete unnecessarily, gossip frequently, resist others' success, seek validation constantly, and react emotionally to minor slights. They are easy to provoke, easy to manipulate, and easy to destabilize. Machiavelli understood that insecurity creates blind spots. An insecure person reveals weaknesses through their reactions. A secure person reveals nothing. When you learn to read insecurity, you understand how to position yourself, how to speak, and how to avoid unnecessary conflict, or, when needed, how to use that insecurity to steer someone's choices. Machiavelli also recognized the power of ego as a controlling force. The ego craves recognition, admiration, and superiority. It fears humiliation and insignificance. This desire shapes behavior more than logic ever could. People will destroy opportunities to protect their ego. They will reject help if it threatens their pride. They will cling to illusions of power rather than face uncomfortable truths. A Machiavellian thinker understands the ego and knows how to navigate it. You do not challenge someone's ego, you redirect it. You do not confront their pride, you guide it. You allow people to believe decisions were their own, even when you were the one steering them. This is not manipulation for cruelty's sake. It is strategic influence based on understanding how the human mind protects itself. Another core law of human nature is the desire for belonging and approval. People fear social rejection more than physical hardship. They change their behavior to fit into groups, align with opinions, and avoid judgment. This desire for acceptance makes them predictable and malleable. Whoever controls a group's norms controls individual behavior within the group. Machiavellian minds leverage this by positioning themselves as valuable allies, respected authorities, or necessary figures within social circles. When people want your approval, they become easier to guide. When they fear losing your approval, they become even easier to control. Machiavelli also revealed the law of short memory. People forget favors, sacrifices, and acts of loyalty far faster than they forget insults or betrayals. Gratitude is short-lived, resentment is not. Many make the mistake of replacing practical strategy with emotional generosity. They assume people will feel indebted for past help. But human nature does not work that way. People forget what you did for them as soon as their circumstances change. A Machiavellian thinker does not rely on gratitude, they rely on aligned incentives. Gratitude fades. Self-interest endures. Another important law is the predictability of fear. Fear shapes human behavior more strongly than any other emotion. People fear uncertainty, loss, humiliation, failure, and social rejection. They fear confrontation. They fear the unknown. And because of this fear, they avoid risks, delay decisions, and cling to familiarity even when it harms them. Machiavelli understood that fear can be used strategically, not through cruelty, but through certainty. When people know you are not easily intimidated, not easily manipulated, and not easily provoked, they fear crossing you. Fear does not require aggression. It requires presence. It requires boundaries. It requires consistency. A Machiavellian mind commands respect by being someone who cannot be pushed around. Another law of human nature is the need for purpose and direction. Most people do not want to lead. They want to follow someone who appears capable. They seek guidance, structure, confidence, and clarity. This is why strong leaders gain outsized influence. They relieve others of the burden of thinking deeply or planning ahead. Machiavelli recognized that leadership is less about control and more about providing direction that others already crave. When you become someone who knows where they are going, others naturally move in your direction. Machiavelli also understood the law of contradiction, that people often say one thing and do another. They claim they want honesty, but they avoid uncomfortable truths. They claim they value loyalty, but they follow convenience. They claim they love peace, but they gravitate toward drama. They claim they want fairness, but they secretly desire advantage. A Machiavellian thinker does not listen to words. They analyze actions. Words are performances. Behavior is reality. Another key truth is the scarcity of true loyalty. Most people are loyal only as long as it benefits them. When circumstances shift, their loyalty shifts with it. This instability is not personal, it is psychological. Machiavelli warned rulers not to rely on loyalty, but to structure environments where loyalty is mutually beneficial. In the modern world, this means maintaining relationships where incentives are aligned rather than relying on emotional promises. One of the most important laws is the blindness of ego-driven perception. People believe they are rational, consistent, self-aware, yet they fail to see their own biases, weaknesses, and motivations. They project onto others. They misinterpret intentions. They create narratives to protect their identity. A Machiavellian mind sees what people refuse to see in themselves. And that insight gives you influence they cannot detect or resist. To think like Machiavelli is to understand that human nature is predictable. It's not chaotic. Once you master these patterns, you gain an advantage most people never acquire. You stop being reactive. You stop being confused by people's behavior. You stop taking things personally. You start predicting future actions with remarkable accuracy. The world becomes clearer. People become transparent. Your influence becomes stronger. Because the person who understands human nature is the person who controls the environment shaped by that nature. Influence is not loud. Influence is not forceful. Influence is not aggressive. Influence is subtle, invisible, and psychological. It is the ability to shape decisions without issuing commands, to guide behavior without appearing to guide anything, to lead others toward your desired outcome while allowing them to believe the choice was entirely their own. In Machiavelli's world, influence was the highest form of power. because it allowed rulers to maintain control without provoking resistance. The moment someone feels forced, they instinctively rebel. But the moment someone feels they chose freely, they commit more deeply. The art of influence is the art of gently steering the human mind along a path it already wants to follow. And Machiavelli understood this art with unparalleled precision. The first principle of Machiavellian influence is understanding that people rarely resist what they believe they decided. Humans crave autonomy, the feeling of independence, agency, and self-direction. If you attempt to control someone directly, they resist purely to protect the illusion of their own freedom. But if you structure choices so that all outcomes benefit you, then no matter what they choose, they walk willingly into your preferred result. This is the foundation of subtle persuasion. Never impose direction, design the environment, so the desired direction feels natural. Machiavelli understood that influence works best when it is silent. Another core principle is mirroring the person you wish to influence. People are influenced most easily by those who seem similar to them, similar values, similar emotions, similar struggles, similar energy. Mirroring creates psychological resonance. It builds trust without effort. Most people do not realize they like those who mirror them. They simply feel comfortable around such individuals. A Machiavellian thinker mirrors selectively, enough to build rapport, but never so much that their true intentions become visible. The goal is not to imitate, but to align. Alignment creates influence because people drop their defenses when they feel understood. Machiavellian influence also relies on understanding the emotional landscape of others. Every person has emotional vulnerabilities, insecurities, desires, fears, hopes, ambitions, and unresolved wounds. These vulnerabilities shape decisions far more strongly than logic ever could. If you identify a person's emotional drivers, you understand how to influence them. People driven by fear respond to reassurance. People driven by ego respond to flattery. People driven by insecurity respond to validation. People driven by ambition respond to opportunity. People driven by loneliness respond to attention. Influence is never one-size-fits-all. It is precise, tailored, and rooted in emotional intelligence. Another powerful tool of influence is scarcity and unpredictability. If you are always available, always agreeable, always predictable, people begin to take you for granted. They stop valuing your presence. They stop respecting your contribution. They stop fearing your absence. Machiavelli understood that power grows when others cannot fully anticipate your actions. A degree of unpredictability keeps people attentive, cautious, and eager to maintain your favor. Scarcity amplifies value. Unpredictability amplifies intrigue. Together, they create a gravitational pull that makes people more receptive to your influence. One of the most subtle forms of Machiavellian influence is suggestion without ownership. Instead of telling someone what they should do, you plant the seed of an idea in a way that makes them believe it originated in their own mind. You ask questions instead of issuing statements. You guide their thinking rather than pushing it. You shape the conversation through implication rather than direction. Questions like, "Have you ever considered?" Or "What do you think might happen if?" Or "Why do you think they reacted that way?" Push people to arrive at conclusions you already chose for them. Influence becomes effortless when people believe the idea was theirs. Machiavellian persuasion also involves controlling information flow. Information is power, but only when used strategically. Say too much and you lose leverage. Say too little and you lose trust. The key is selective transparency. Reveal only what strengthens your position, conceals your vulnerabilities, and guides others in the direction you want. People do not need the whole truth to make a decision. They only need the truth that shapes their perception. A Machiavellian thinker decides what to emphasize, what to downplay, and what to omit. They understand that people rarely verify what they hear. They simply accept the narrative that feels most coherent. Another essential aspect of influence is mastering timing. You can say the right words at the wrong time and lose all impact. You can present the right opportunity too early and create resistance. Influence is often a matter of waiting until the moment when someone is emotionally open. People are most influenceable during uncertainty, frustration, ambition, loneliness, or transition. A Machiavellian thinker watches for these psychological openings. When someone is unsure, they seek guidance. When someone is hurt, they seek reassurance. When someone is ambitious, they seek opportunity. Influence lands most deeply when it answers an emotional need at the exact moment the need is strongest. Machiavelli also understood that credibility is a form of silent influence. When people perceive you as competent, confident, stable, and knowledgeable, they trust your judgment without questioning it. Credibility gives your words weight. Your silence becomes meaningful. Your approval becomes powerful. Your presence alone shapes behavior. Building credibility is slow, but once gained, it becomes one of the strongest forms of influence because people follow you voluntarily, not out of fear or obligation. The art of influence also requires mastering non-reactivity. When someone cannot provoke you emotionally, they lose power over you. When you maintain composure during conflict, others crumble or reveal their intentions. Non-reactivity intimidates, confuses, and disarms people who expect emotional responses. Machiavellian thinkers rarely show anger, rarely show anxiety, and rarely show desperation. Their calmness projects authority. Their stillness becomes a weapon. Their emotional control allows them to analyze situations objectively, while others are blinded by their own reactions. Another principle of Machiavellian influence is strategic silence. Silence can create pressure. Silence can create curiosity. Silence can expose insecurity. Silence can force others to reveal information they intended to hide. People fear silence. They rush to fill it. And in that rush, they expose themselves. Strategic silence is one of the simplest, yet most powerful tools of influence. It signals confidence, authority, and control. Words are loud, but silence shapes the space in which those words exist. Influence also depends on managing people's expectations. If people expect too much from you, disappointment weakens your influence. If they expect too little, you lose respect. Machiavellian thinkers set expectations intentionally. They underpromise and overdeliver. They present themselves as competent but not miraculous. They deliver consistency that shapes trust. Expectations guide perception, and perception guides influence. Another key tactic is shaping identity, both yours and others. People comply with behaviors that align with their identity. If you reinforce someone's identity, you're the type of person who always does the right thing, or you strike me as someone with strong instincts. They behave in alignment with that identity because they want to maintain the self-image you validated. Identity-based influence is powerful because people follow not you, but the version of themselves you helped create. Machiavelli also understood the power of controlled vulnerability. Revealing slight selective vulnerability, a flaw, a struggle, a story, builds trust and lowers others' defenses. But this vulnerability must be intentional and limited. Too much vulnerability invites disrespect. Too little invites distrust. The key is balance. Enough transparency to seem human, but not enough to reveal your pressure points. Controlled vulnerability increases influence because people feel connected to you while still respecting you. A Machiavellian thinker also influences through framing, presenting information in a way that shapes interpretation. The same situation can be seen as opportunity or threat depending on how it is framed. People make decisions based not on the facts themselves, but on how those facts are presented. When you control the frame, you control the meaning. And when you control meaning, you control behavior. Ultimately, influence is not about dominating people. It is about understanding them deeply, often better than they understand themselves. It is about guiding them subtly, shaping their perceptions, aligning with their desires, leveraging their fears, and creating environments where your preferred actions become the natural choice. When mastered, influence becomes effortless, not because you force outcomes, but because you design the conditions that make those outcomes inevitable. Influence is the art of moving the world without letting the world know you moved it. It is power dressed in silence. Control disguised as cooperation. Direction hidden inside choice. And once you master this art, you stop playing the game of power. You begin designing it. Power is not simply about gaining advantage, it is about protecting it. And nothing protects power more effectively than the Machiavellian mask. The mask is not deception for cruelty's sake. It is strategy for survival. It is the art of revealing only what strengthens you and concealing everything that could weaken you. It is the discipline of controlling your outward behavior, your emotional expression, your words, and your perceived intentions so that others can never fully read you, never accurately anticipate you, and never easily undermine you. A Machiavellian mind does not walk through the world naked. It walks armored, wrapped in layers of psychological protection. Because in every environment, social, political, professional, or relational, people assess, judge, compare, envy, and strategize. The person who reveals too much becomes vulnerable. The person who reveals selectively becomes untouchable. The first purpose of the Machiavellian mask is to create emotional opacity, the inability for others to decipher what you truly feel. Emotional transparency may seem virtuous, but it is often a liability. When people can read your emotions, they can manipulate them. When they see your irritation, they know how to provoke you. When they see your enthusiasm, they know how to exploit you. When they see your fear, they know how to pressure you. When they see your desire, they know how to influence you. The mask prevents this. It allows you to feel deeply while revealing little. It gives you the power of stillness, the ability to remain calm when others expect panic, composed when others expect anger, indifferent when others expect desperation. Emotional control is the first layer of the mask, and it grants you authority before you ever say a word. The second purpose of the mask is to create strategic ambiguity. People are uncomfortable when they cannot predict someone. They fear what they cannot categorize. They respect what they cannot fully understand. Ambiguity creates a psychological advantage because it keeps others cautious. When people cannot anticipate your next move, they cannot effectively plan against you. They hesitate. They overthink. They reveal themselves while trying to decipher you. A predictable person is easy to control. An unpredictable one commands attention and caution. Machiavelli knew that ambiguity was not about hiding intentions indefinitely. It was about revealing them only when it gave you maximum leverage. The third purpose of the mask is identity. Separation, the ability to separate who you truly are from who you are, must appear to be in certain environments. Your internal identity may be intense, strategic, observant, and ambitious. But the external identity you present might be humble, calm, agreeable, and harmless. This separation protects you. If you appear too ambitious, insecure people will try to sabotage you. If you appear too intelligent, envious people will feel threatened. If you appear too confident, competitive people will attempt to outmaneuver you. The mask allows you to choose your presentation. It allows you to fit into environments that would reject your true power until the moment revealing your strength benefits you. Another crucial aspect of the Machiavellian mask is selective vulnerability. Showing vulnerability is sometimes necessary for trust and connection, but too much vulnerability invites exploitation. The Machiavellian approach is not to eliminate vulnerability but to control it. You reveal vulnerability strategically, in small doses, only when it benefits you. A minor flaw, a relatable weakness, a personal story, these can humanize you and lower others' defenses. But you never reveal vulnerabilities that expose your pressure points, your deepest fears, or your emotional triggers. Selective vulnerability builds trust while preserving power. The mask also allows you to blend into your environment. Machiavelli understood that standing out too soon attracts scrutiny, envy, or resistance, but blending in allows you to observe without interference. It gives you time to understand the power dynamics, the alliances, the conflicts, and the unspoken rules of the environment. When you blend in, people reveal themselves openly in your presence because they do not see you as a threat. You become invisible in the best possible way, unnoticed, unchallenged, and underestimated. Being underestimated is a powerful advantage. The mask ensures that others misjudge your capabilities until the moment you choose to display them. Another purpose of the Machiavellian mask is controlling your reputation. Reputation is one of the strongest forces in social psychology. It shapes how others treat you before you even speak. The mask allows you to consciously cultivate the reputation that benefits you most, whether it is reliability, competence, calmness, harmlessness, or quiet strength. Machiavelli believed that reputation must be managed deliberately, because once it solidifies, it becomes difficult to change. Your mask becomes the version of you that the world accepts, while the real version remains protected, observing, calculating, and choosing its movements carefully. A deeper layer of the Machiavellian mask is the concealment of ambition. Nothing triggers envy, resistance, or sabotage more quickly than visible ambition. When people sense that you want power, they become defensive. They begin to watch you, question you, and undermine you. They see you as a competitor rather than an ally. This is why Machiavelli advised rulers to conceal their true ambitions until the moment those ambitions could no longer be stopped. The mask allows you to move silently, acting without drawing attention. It protects your ascent by ensuring no one sees you climbing until you are all ready to. High to pull down. The mask also serves to manipulate perception. People judge based not on reality, but on impressions. The mask allows you to shape impressions intentionally. It allows you to appear trustworthy even when you are withholding information. It allows you to appear confident even when you are analyzing. It allows you to appear supportive even while evaluating loyalty. Machiavelli understood that perception often matters more than truth because people respond to what they believe. When you control perception, you control reactions. Another key function of the mask is emotional distancing. When you distance your emotions from your decisions, you gain clarity. When you distance your emotions from others, you gain leverage. Most people reveal their emotional state constantly through facial expressions, tone, body language, and impulsive speech. But a Machiavellian mind cultivates emotional distance. Not detachment from humanity, but detachment from reaction. Emotional distance allows you to watch without responding, listen without agreeing, and withstand provocation without breaking character. This control frustrates manipulative people and reassures disciplined minds. It signals strength. The Machiavellian mask also protects you from psychological manipulation. When people cannot read your intentions, they cannot influence them. When people cannot see your weaknesses, they cannot exploit them. When people cannot predict your emotions, they cannot provoke them. The mask turns manipulation attempts into harmless gestures because they strike an impenetrable surface. The more unreadable you are, the less power others have over you. Another essential component of the mask is controlling access. Not everyone should have access to your time, your energy, your mind, or your emotions. Machiavelli understood that power dilutes when it becomes too accessible. The mask helps you decide who enters your inner circle and who remains outside. It filters people. It prevents opportunists from attaching themselves to you. It distinguishes genuine allies from strategic parasites. Access is currency, and the mask helps you protect it. Finally, the Machiavellian mask gives you the power of transformation. You become adaptable, able to shift your demeanor, tone, presentation, and strategy depending on the environment. You are not rigid but fluid, not defined by one approach, but capable of wearing different versions of yourself depending on what maximizes your influence. This flexibility is not dishonesty, it is survival. Rigid people break. Fluid people rise to where the Machiavellian mask is not to lie, but to strategize. Not to deceive for harm, but to protect your autonomy. Not to manipulate cruelly, but to move wisely in a world where full honesty is often punished. The mask makes you unreadable. Unreadable makes you untouchable. Untouchable makes you powerful. Power is not an abstract concept. It is a living force that shapes every interaction, every relationship, every hierarchy, and every environment where human beings exist. Whether you recognize it or not, You are constantly participating in power dynamics. In conversations, someone leads and someone follows. In workplaces, someone sets the tone and someone adapts. In friendships and romantic relationships, someone influences more and someone yields more. Power is present even in silence, in gestures, in energy, in timing, and in the small psychological exchanges that people rarely notice but constantly feel. Machiavelli understood that to control your world, you must learn to read these dynamics with the same clarity one reads a map, observing who holds leverage, who seeks approval, who fears conflict, who desires validation, who commands authority, and who hides insecurity behind loudness. The person who understands power dynamics sees a structure where others see chaos. The first principle of power dynamics is dominance and submission. Not in the physical sense, but in the psychological sense. Dominance is not about aggression. It is about setting the frame, defining the emotional and conversational environment that others unconsciously adapt to. A dominant individual sets the pace of interactions, chooses when engagement happens, signals comfort during tension, and displays self-assurance through calm behavior. Submission is the opposite, following the other person's pace. Seeking approval, reacting emotionally, accommodating too quickly, or adjusting oneself to avoid disapproval. Most power exchanges happen without words. Contact, posture, timing, and stillness communicate more dominance or submission than any speech. Machiavelli understood that the person who controls the frame controls the interaction. For example, a dominant frame might be calm indifference, confident curiosity, or controlled authority. When you remain composed while the other person becomes reactive, they shift into the submissive role. This shift gives you influence. Humans instinctively respond to hierarchy. They look for someone to follow in moments of uncertainty, and they submit to the person who appears strongest psychologically. Dominance is not about control, it is about clarity. It signals stability. People gravitate towards stability naturally. Another key principle of power dynamics is understanding leverage the resources, abilities, emotional control, or social positioning that make one person more influential than another. Leverage can be social status, reputation, network, emotional, who cares more, who fears loss, financial resources, independence, informational knowledge others lack, or psychological confidence, self-control, detachment. Machiavelli believed that power comes not from what you possess, but from what others believe you possess. If people believe you have leverage, they treat you as powerful, even if your real leverage is limited. Perception creates hierarchy, and hierarchy shapes behavior. Power dynamics also rely on the law of emotional investment. The more emotionally invested a person is in an outcome, a relationship, or a decision, the less power they hold. Emotional investment exposes vulnerability, the fear of losing something. The person who desires less has more power. The person who fears loss becomes submissive. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He believed that if you want to maintain power, you must avoid becoming overly attached. Detachment allows you to make strategic decisions. Attachment leads to emotional decisions, and emotional decisions destroy influence. Another truth Machiavelli emphasized is the role of confidence as a power signal. Humans are wired to follow confidence, even if it is unfounded. Confidence creates certainty, and certainty creates influence. People do not follow the best idea. They follow the person who expresses their idea with the most conviction. A Machiavellian thinker uses confidence as a tool, not as a reflection of ego. They understand that certainty, even when silent, shifts the hierarchy in their favor. Calm confidence signals dominance. Nervousness signals submission. The hierarchy forms instantly. Power dynamics also involve the distribution of attention. The person who receives the most attention often holds social power, but the person who gives the least attention often holds psychological power. When you withhold attention strategically, people seek it more. When you give attention sparingly, people value it more. Machiavelli understood attention as currency. The powerful give it intentionally. The powerless give it impulsively. The one who rushes to respond loses leverage. The one who responds on their own timing gains control. Another fundamental principle is resource control, not in the literal sense alone, but in the psychological sense. The person who controls opportunities, time, approval, or emotional availability controls the dynamic. Machiavelli believed that dependency is the foundation of power. If someone depends on you for support, validation, status, opportunity, protection, or guidance, you hold power. The key is not to abuse dependency, but to recognize the influence it gives. People follow those who fulfill their needs. The hierarchy forms naturally around fulfillment. In every power dynamic, someone is leading the narrative. This person frames situations, interprets events, and defines meanings. For example, in an argument, the person who calmly summarizes the other person's emotions and states them as facts gains control of the emotional landscape. In a negotiation, the person who defines what is reasonable shapes expectations. In social interactions, the person who sets the tone influences the entire group dynamic. Machiavelli understood that power often comes from the subtle manipulation of narratives. It's not from overt dominance. Another important insight in Machiavellian psychology is the role of boundaries. Boundaries signal self-respect. Weak boundaries signal weakness. When you tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, manipulation, or poor behavior, you place yourself at the bottom of the hierarchy. People treat you based on what you permit. Boundaries create power because they teach others how to interact with you. They show that you do not fear loss. They show that you value yourself. They show that you are willing to walk away. And nothing creates power faster than the ability to walk away. Machiavelli also revealed that people test each other constantly. Through small comments, subtle provocations, boundary pushing, and emotional pressure. These tests determine hierarchy. If you react emotionally, you lose status. If you defend yourself too aggressively, you reveal insecurity. But if you respond with calm indifference, you signal dominance. Power dynamics are shaped not by major confrontations, but by hundreds of micro-tests. A Machiavellian mind passes these tests by refusing to be pulled into emotional traps. Their stillness becomes power. Another layer of power dynamics is positional versus personal power. Positional power comes from titles, roles, or authority granted by others. It is external and temporary. Personal power comes from confidence, competence, intelligence, emotional control, charisma, and strategic thinking. It is internal and permanent. Machiavelli favored personal power because it is not dependent on external validation. Even without titles, a person with strong personal power commands respect. They influence naturally. They shape environments through presence alone. Those who rely solely on positional power crumble the moment their title is removed. Those with personal power rise in any environment. Machiavelli understood that alliances shape power just as much as individual strength. No one maintains influence alone. Alliances are strategic, not sentimental. Strong alliances are formed through mutual benefit, aligned interests, and complementary strengths. A Machiavellian thinker chooses allies not based on emotional preference, but based on utility. Who supports your goals, who strengthens your weaknesses, who opens doors, protects your interests, who elevates your status. Alliances create networks of power that amplify influence. Another important element of power dynamics is the control of conflict. Conflict is inevitable, but the person who manages conflict with composure maintains dominance. Machiavelli believed that controlled conflict strengthens authority. You stand firm without hostility, assert without aggression, and maintain dignity under pressure, you rise in the hierarchy. People remember how you behave in tension more than how you behave in calm moments. Power is measured during storm, not sunshine. One of the deepest truths Machiavelli taught is that power must not be displayed constantly, only strategically. If you assert power too often, you provoke resistance. If you assert power too rarely, you lose influence. The key is balance. Display power only when it reinforces hierarchy, protects boundaries, or secures necessary outcomes. Overuse of power reveals insecurity. Underuse of power invites exploitation. Strategic use of power creates respect without creating enemies. The final realization of Machiavellian power dynamics is this: the hierarchy is not fixed, it is fluid. Power rises and falls based on confidence, behavior, positioning, alliances, emotional control, and perception. The person at the bottom today can rise tomorrow. The person at the top today can fall by next week. The Machiavellian mind understands this fluidity and adapts constantly. They sharpen their skills, refine their strategies, and adjust their behavior based on the shifting patterns of influence. Power is a psychological game. The person who sees the game clearly plays it better than anyone else. Manipulation is a word people fear, misunderstand, and deny, yet it happens around them every day, often without their awareness. Most manipulation is not malicious. It is simply influence executed with sophistication. It is persuasion elevated to its highest strategic form. It is the art of guiding someone toward an action that benefits both them and you. Without triggering their defenses or revealing your intent, Machiavelli understood that direct force creates resistance, but subtle guidance creates compliance. When people believe they have chosen freely, cooperation becomes effortless. Manipulation, in its most refined form, is not coercion, it is orchestration. It is shaping conditions so that the desired outcome becomes the natural outcome. The first principle of strategic manipulation is steering emotion, not logic. Logic rarely drives decisions, emotion does. You do not change someone's mind by presenting facts. You change their mind by influencing the emotional state in which they interpret those facts. If someone feels threatened, they reject your ideas. If they feel respected, they open up. If they feel insecure, they cling to familiar choices. If they feel admired, they follow guidance more easily. A Machiavellian thinker asks, "What emotional state will make this person move in the direction I want?" Then they create that state. Sometimes with tone, sometimes with silence. Sometimes with validation, sometimes with uncertainty. Emotion is the steering wheel of human behavior. Manipulation also relies on controlling the frame. The frame is the context in which a conversation or situation is interpreted. It is not the content that matters. It is the frame around it. For example, if you frame something as a rare opportunity, people fear missing out. If you frame it as the logical next step, they feel foolish resisting. If you frame it as their idea, they feel ownership and commitment. The frame is invisible influence. Whoever controls the frame controls the meaning. And whoever controls meaning controls decisions. Another Machiavellian technique is creating the illusion of choice. People resist being told what to do, but they willingly choose from options they perceive as their own. A Machiavellian mind provides options that all lead to the desired outcome. Would you rather do this now or after lunch? Both lead to the same conclusion. The illusion of choice preserves ego, and ego preservation reduces resistance. People who feel autonomous feel safe, and people who feel safe are influenceable. Strategic manipulation also uses mirroring and pacing, matching someone's emotional state or perspective before gradually shifting it. If someone is anxious, you begin by acknowledging their concern. If someone is angry, you validate their frustration. If someone is excited, you match their enthusiasm. Once alignment is established, you begin guiding the emotional tone toward the direction you want. Mirroring disarms people. Pacing builds rapport. Leading becomes effortless once you are in sync with their psychological rhythm. One of the most effective Machiavellian strategies is withholding information selectively. People often assume manipulation means lying, but Machiavelli preferred omission over falsehood. Withholding information is safer, harder to trace, and more elegant. You reveal what helps your objective and conceal what may provoke resistance. People rarely question information they do not know exists. This subtle shaping of perspective is among the most powerful forms of manipulation because It limits the possible conclusions someone can reach without them. Realizing that their perception has been curated, Machiavellian manipulation also involves strategic exaggeration and understatements. You may amplify certain risks to increase caution. You may downplay difficulties to encourage action. You may emphasize benefits to accelerate decision-making. You may minimize obstacles to reduce hesitation. People's actions are shaped not by objective facts, but by the emotional weight assigned to those facts. By adjusting emotional weight, you adjust behavior. Another powerful tool is planting ideas indirectly. Suppose you want someone to consider a new direction. Instead of proposing it outright, you tell a story about someone else who made a similar choice and benefited. Stories bypass resistance because people absorb messages without feeling targeted. They interpret the narrative themselves, drawing the conclusion you intended. Indirect influence is subtle but extremely effective. People rarely argue with their own interpretations. Machiavelli also understood the power of scarcity and urgency. When something seems rare or limited, people value it more. When something seems fleeting, people act more quickly. Scarcity triggers fear of loss. Urgency triggers impulsive action. Used ethically, these tools motivate people to make decisions they might otherwise delay. Used unethically, they create manipulation through pressure. The Machiavellian approach is not about deceit. It is about understanding psychological realities. Humans procrastinate when they feel no urgency. They move when they feel scarcity. Another essential tactic is controlling where attention goes. People make decisions based on what they focus on, not on all available information. You can guide someone's choices by guiding their focus. You highlight benefits, and they move forward. You highlight risks, and they retreat. You direct attention toward what helps you and away from what harms you. Machiavelli understood that attention is the gateway to influence. Shift attention, and you shift behavior. A deeper layer of strategic manipulation is creating emotional reciprocity. When you give someone something they value, validation, support, attention, opportunity, praise, they feel psychologically compelled to reciprocate. This is not conscious. It is a deep human instinct rooted in social survival. By giving selectively and intentionally, you create invisible debts. Debts that people repay through compliance, loyalty, or cooperation. Machiavelli advised rulers to give small favors, strategically because even small favors create psychological obligations. Another technique is shaping expectations. Expectations influence perception. If someone expects difficulty, even moderate effort feels exhausting. If someone expects ease, they approach challenges with confidence. By shaping how someone anticipates an outcome, you influence how they experience it. When expectations are calibrated correctly, resistance drops. When expectations are manipulated strategically, outcomes become predictable. Manipulation also relies on strategic silence. Silence pressures people to speak, justify themselves, reveal intentions, or fill emotional gaps. Silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty makes people more influenceable. Most people fear silence and rush to break it. A Machiavellian mind uses silence as a psychological tool, creating discomfort that nudges people toward concessions, admissions, or agreements. Another essential principle is rewarding desired behavior immediately. Humans repeat behaviors that are reinforced. When someone behaves in a way that benefits you, a small acknowledgement, approval, gratitude, attention, enthusiasm, increases the likelihood they will repeat it. Manipulation in its most refined form is simply conditioning. Not through punishment, but through subtle rewards that shape behavior gradually and invisibly. Machiavelli also understood the importance of timing. Influence fails when the timing is wrong. If someone is stressed, they resist. If someone is distracted, they ignore. If someone is angry, they rebel. Strategic manipulation waits for psychological openings, moments of uncertainty, fatigue, hope, confusion, or ambition. People are most influenceable during transitions. The Machiavellian thinker watches for signals and acts at the moment when resistance is lowest. One of the final layers of Machiavellian manipulation is controlling interpretation. Two people can experience the same situation, but interpret it differently based on how it is framed. If you guide the interpretation, this is an opportunity. This is a warning. This is a test. This is a sign. You guide the emotional response. Emotional response guides behavior. People do not react to events. They react to the meaning assigned to events. Control meaning, you control action. But the most important insight in Machiavelli's philosophy is this: manipulation is most powerful when it remains invisible. When someone senses manipulation, they resist violently. But when manipulation feels like understanding, guidance, or support, it becomes influence. The Machiavellian strategist never pressures, never demands, never exposes their intentions. They create conditions that make the desired choice feel like the most natural choice. Strategic manipulation is not about harming others. It is about mastering the psychological mechanisms that shape decisions. It is about guiding outcomes with intelligence instead of force. It is persuasion elevated into strategy. Influence hidden within freedom. Control disguised as cooperation. When you master this art, you stop fighting for power. Power begins flowing toward you naturally. Deception is one of the most misunderstood concepts in the study of power. People often imagine deception as blatant lies, dramatic betrayals, or theatrical schemes. But to Machiavelli, deception was rarely loud. It was subtle, elegant, controlled, and psychological. Deception is not simply the art of hiding truth. It is the art of revealing the right truth at the right time. It is not about constructing elaborate falsehoods. It is about shaping perception with precision. It is not about manipulating reality. It is about manipulating how reality is interpreted. Machiavelli understood something most people never do. Truth and deception are not opposites. They are tools. And the person who knows when to use each becomes extraordinarily powerful. The first principle of Machiavellian deception is recognizing that people deceive themselves long before anyone deceives them. Human beings filter reality through emotion, bias, desire, fear, and expectation. They believe what makes them feel safe. They ignore what challenges their self-image. They reject facts that contradict their worldview. This self-deception creates an environment where subtle manipulation thrives. You do not need to lie to someone who is already lying to themselves. You simply craft your message to align with their existing illusions. Machiavelli's brilliance was in understanding that people often seek deception, not truth, because deception protects their psychological comfort. Another core principle is misdirection, the art of drawing attention away from what matters by focusing attention elsewhere. Humans are easily distracted. They fixate on drama, emotion, or whatever feels urgent. Misdirection works by presenting something that captures attention while the real action occurs unnoticed. In politics, it may be a symbolic gesture that hides strategic negotiation. In relationships, it may be a confession that conceals a deeper truth. In business, it may be a minor loss highlighted to mask a greater gain. Misdirection is powerful because people cannot analyze what they do not see. When you control attention, you control interpretation. And when you control interpretation, you control power. Machiavelli also understood the strategic use of partial truths. A partial truth is more effective than a lie because it contains authenticity that cannot be disputed. It disarms suspicion. It builds credibility. It masks the omission of critical details. A partial truth creates the illusion of transparency while allowing you to conceal your deeper intentions. For example, sharing a harmless weakness distracts from a real vulnerability. Revealing an unimportant plan diverts attention from a significant one. Offering a simplified version of your motives prevents anyone from uncovering your real strategy. Partial truths are powerful because they satisfy curiosity, while hiding what truly matters. Another technique in Machiavellian deception is using honesty strategically. Honesty, when used sparingly, becomes a weapon. If you are honest in moments where dishonesty would be expected, you gain trust. If you confess a minor flaw voluntarily, people assume you have nothing major to hide. If you criticize yourself in small ways, People stop suspecting you of larger deceptions. Honesty builds credibility, and credibility makes future deception invisible. Machiavelli believed that honesty is most effective when it is used with intention, not innocence. A reputation for honesty becomes a shield, not a virtue. It gives you freedom to act strategically without provoking suspicion. A deeper layer of Machiavellian deception is controlling ambiguity. Ambiguity is the space where people fill in blanks with their own assumptions. When your actions, intentions, or statements are slightly unclear, people create narratives that reflect their own biases. This is profoundly useful. Ambiguity allows you to avoid commitment while appearing cooperative. It allows you to appear supportive without taking a stand. It allows you to seem compliant while maintaining internal resistance. Ambiguity is power because it keeps options open, interpretations flexible, and your true motives protected. Machiavelli understood that clarity can trap you, but ambiguity can free you. Another important tool is feigned weakness. Pretending to be weaker, less knowledgeable, or less prepared than you are can disarm competitors. It lowers suspicion. It encourages underestimation. And underestimation is one of the greatest strategic advantages a person can possess. When others think you are harmless, they reveal themselves openly. They expose their plans. They relax their guard. They make mistakes. Machiavelli believed that being underestimated is often safer than being respected. Early because respect provokes competition. While harmlessness invites opportunity, deception also relies on controlling your narrative. People do not judge you based on who you are. They judge you based on the story they believe about you. If you do not create your own narrative, others will create one for you. A Machiavellian thinker shapes their narrative intentionally. Trustworthy, but unreadable. Competent but humble, ambitious but patient, friendly but independent. This narrative acts as the public face of your private strategy. It protects you. It disarms others. It gives you room to maneuver. The story people believe about you becomes the mask through which your power grows. Machiavelli also emphasized the timing of truth. Truth can be destructive or powerful, depending on when it is revealed. Reveal truth too early, and you lose leverage. Reveal truth too late, and you lose control. The right truth at the right moment can shift alliances, reshape perceptions, or dissolve resistance. Timing is everything. For example, revealing information during someone's emotional vulnerability creates immediate influence. Revealing a truth during conflict can redirect aggression. Revealing a truth during negotiation can shift power dynamics. Truth is not simply a fact. It is a strategic tool whose impact depends entirely on timing. Another essential concept is creating believable motivations. When you act strategically, you must always provide others with a motive they can accept. People are more comfortable believing simple explanations, kindness, convenience, coincidence, helpfulness, or practicality. They rarely investigate deeper motives unless forced. A Machiavellian strategist provides harmless motives to obscure meaningful ones. This prevents suspicion and makes your actions appear natural rather than intentional. The greatest manipulation is when your target believes they understand you, even when they don't. One of Machiavelli's most profound insights is the importance of staying unreadable. When people can predict your thoughts, they can manipulate you. When they can predict your strategies, they can block you. When they can read your emotions, they can provoke you. Deception begins with concealment. Conceal emotion. Conceal ambition. Conceal plans. Conceal weakness. Not through coldness, but through neutrality. Not through silence alone, but through vagueness. Being unreadable is not about deception for deception's sake. It is about preventing others from gaining power over you. Another powerful strategy is leveraging other people's assumptions. People often assume the world is simpler than it is. They assume others think like them. They assume kindness means purity, silence means agreement, confidence means arrogance, and humility means weakness. These assumptions create predictable misinterpretations. A Machiavellian thinker does not correct these assumptions, they use them. If someone interprets your kindness as harmlessness, you allow it. If someone interprets your silence as submission, you allow it. If someone interprets your humility as limitation, you allow it. Their misinterpretation is their blindness and your advantage. A deeper level of deception is strategic transparency, revealing small truths to hide greater ones. Sharing a minor insecurity distracts from your real strength. Confessing a safe mistake conceals a strategic move. Admitting a small plan distracts from the bigger one unfolding in the background. Transparency becomes a misdirection tool. People trust those who confess something. They rarely suspect someone who appears open. The illusion of openness often hides the most calculated minds. Finally, Machiavelli understood that deception is most effective when it aligns with human nature rather than fighting against it. You do not force people to believe something unnatural. You offer them a belief that fits their worldview, their desires, or their fears. People accept deception when it feels familiar, comforting, or flattering. You give them a narrative they want to believe, and they embrace it willingly. Deception is not ugliness, it is sophistication. Not cruelty, but control. Not chaos, but deliberate design. It is the art of shaping perception with precision, the craft of guiding minds without force, the mastery of using truth, lies, silence as tools to build power. When you understand deception the Machiavellian way, you stop being manipulated. You stop being blindsided. You stop being predictable. And you rise into a realm where you control the narrative while appearing simply to participate in it. Power does not rely solely on intelligence, strategy, or ambition. It relies on psychology. And within that psychology, three forces dominate all human behavior: fear, respect, and authority. Machiavelli understood that if you master these forces, you shape the world around you effortlessly. People follow those they respect, but they obey those they fear. They admire authority, but they submit to the presence of strength. Most people misunderstand these forces because they assume fear is brutality, respect is flattery, and authority is domination. But Machiavelli saw deeper. Fear, respect, and authority are not emotional reactions. They are psychological conditions. They form the architecture of influence. And the strategist who grasps them becomes someone others cannot challenge easily, manipulate carelessly, or forget quickly. The first force, fear, is often viewed as negative, but Machiavelli dissected it as a practical psychological reality. Fear is not cruelty. Fear is clarity. It is the recognition that you are not someone to be pushed, disrespected, or taken advantage of. Fear arises not from threats, but from consequences. When people know that crossing you brings discomfort, loss, or removal of access, they behave accordingly. Machiavelli emphasized that fear is effective because it is predictable. People avoid what they fear. They calculate around it. They modify behavior to avoid triggering it. However, he also warned that fear must be controlled. Too much fear breeds hatred. Too little fear breeds disrespect. True Machiavellian fear is subtle, not loud. Quiet awareness that you are not someone who tolerates disrespect. Fear, in Machiavellian psychology, is not about aggression. It is about boundaries backed with consequences. The moment your threats are empty, you lose power. The moment your boundaries crumble, you lose authority. People test limits constantly. If you say you won't tolerate something yet, tolerate it anyway. You unintentionally teach others that your words mean nothing. This is why Machiavelli believed that consistency creates fear, not violence. A calm, consistent person who enforces boundaries with discipline is far more intimidating than someone who explodes emotionally. Calmness signals control. Control signals danger. Emotional outbursts signal weakness. People fear those who do not fear them. The second force is respect, a far rarer currency in human relationships than kindness, attention, or approval. Respect cannot be begged for. It cannot be demanded. It cannot be negotiated. Respect is earned through behavior, not personality. People respect strength, stability, competence, intelligence, and self-control. They respect those who follow through, who demonstrate capability, who maintain composure under pressure, who keep their word, and who do not seek validation. Machiavelli understood that respect arises when someone experiences your value directly, when they witness your judgment, your skill, your ability to anticipate outcomes, your refusal to collapse under stress. Respect grows in silence, not in speeches. It grows in consistency, not in charisma. You do not need to shout to be respected. You simply need to become undeniable. Machiavelli also understood that respect creates voluntary influence, while fear creates compulsory influence. The strongest leaders combine both. You want people to respect your competence and admire your intelligence, but also to fear the consequences of manipulation or betrayal. When you combine respect and fear correctly, people neither oppose you nor exploit you. They follow your lead because they trust your strength and fear your boundaries. This balance creates authority, the third and most powerful force of all. Authority is not dominance. It is not control. It is influence elevated into law. Authority is when people defer to you automatically, even without thinking. It is when your presence alone shapes behavior. It is when people trust your judgment more than their own. Authority is built through perception and reinforced through consistency. When people believe you are competent, decisive, emotionally stable, and capable of handling challenges, they treat your words as guidance rather than suggestions. Authority simplifies influence. You no longer persuade, direct. You no longer justify, you state. You no longer negotiate, you set terms. Authority is influence without effort. To build Machiavellian authority, you must master emotional stillness. Emotional people are not taken seriously. They are seen as unstable, reactive, and weak. Stillness, on the other hand, signals control, and control is the foundation of authority. When you do not react to provocation, you project power. When you do not rush to explain yourself, you project confidence. When you speak less but mean more, you project dominance. Authority emerges when your behavior reflects internal strength. Machiavelli knew that true authority cannot be performed, it must be embodied. Another critical aspect of authority is strategic distance. Familiarity decreases respect. Overexposure reduces mystique. When you are too accessible, too eager, too emotionally available, you lower your perceived value. Distance creates elevation. Elevation creates respect. Respect creates authority. A Machiavellian thinker never allows others unlimited access to their time, energy, or emotions. They remain present when necessary, but unavailable when appropriate. They speak when something must be said, but remain silent when silence increases value. Authority grows from intentional scarcity. A deeper layer of Machiavellian authority is competence, displayed through calm execution. When you solve problems efficiently, make decisions with clarity, and adapt quickly without emotional chaos, people instinctively trust you. Humans crave stability. They follow the person who seems most stable. When you consistently display competence under pressure, others assign authority to you automatically, often without realizing it. Authority is not claimed, it is recognized. Machiavelli also emphasized the importance of appearing fair while remaining strategic. People respect fairness, but fairness alone does not maintain order. Strategic fairness, fairness applied selectively to reinforce your authority, creates loyalty while preventing exploitation. When you are fair to those who deserve it and firm with those who test boundaries, you shape a hierarchy that is respected rather than feared alone. Strategic fairness strengthens authority by creating the perception that you are just, even when acting in your own interest. Another key Machiavellian insight is the role of controlled intimidation. Intimidation is not aggression, it is the projection of consequences. Most intimidation occurs subtly, in posture, in silence, in expression, in the tone that signals you are not easily moved. You never threaten, but people sense the discomfort of disrespecting you. You never warn, but people sense your capacity for retaliation. Controlled intimidation creates psychological boundaries without spoken threats. Machiavelli valued this form of power because it creates fear without creating hate. A crucial principle is never revealing your full strength. When people know your limits, they test them. When they think they understand your capabilities, they strategize around them. But when your strength is partially hidden, when your Intelligence, ambition, or resilience cannot be easily measured. People become cautious. Uncertainty is a powerful psychological force. Machiavelli believed that being underestimated in some areas, while being respected in others, creates a balance that strengthens authority. People fear what they cannot define. They respect what they cannot surpass. The psychology of authority also depends on speaking with precision. Words shape perception. Those who ramble, justify, or over-explain reveal insecurity. Those who speak briefly, clearly, and purposefully project dominance. Authority requires verbal discipline, statement, not explanation. Direction, not discussion. When you speak as if your words carry weight, people treat them as heavy. When you speak as if seeking approval, you lose influence. Machiavelli knew that the voice is not just communication, it is power. Another factor in Machiavellian authority is your willingness to enforce consequences. Boundaries mean nothing without enforcement. Respect means nothing without follow-through. Authority means nothing if it can be challenged without repercussion. People respect the person who is willing to walk away. Fire someone, end a relationship, impose a standard, or decline a request. Enforcement is the backbone of authority. Without consequences, fear dissolves, respect diminishes, and authority collapses. When you enforce consequences calmly and consistently, people internalize the hierarchy you create. But the deepest Machiavellian insight is this: fear fades. Respect grows. Authority endures. Fear influences the moment. Respect influences the relationship. Authority influences the environment. To wield power effectively, you must understand all three and know when to apply each. Fear must be subtle. Respect must be earned. Authority must be embodied. Master fear, and no one will casually disrespect you.
Master respect.
And people will willingly follow you.
Master authority.
And you will shape environments simply by existing within them. This is the psychology of power. And when you understand it, you cease being controlled by others. You become the gravitational center around which others align. To think like Machiavelli is not merely to understand power, it is to transform into someone who cannot be controlled. Someone who moves through the world with strategic awareness, emotional discipline, psychological advantage, and a presence that influences without effort. Becoming untouchable does not mean you cannot be harmed. It means you cannot be easily manipulated, intimidated, exploited, or undermined. It means you have evolved beyond the vulnerabilities that most people carry: emotional impulsiveness, fear of judgment, desperation for approval, naive trust, and predictable reactions. To become untouchable is to become a strategist in a world full of impulsive actors. It is to elevate yourself into a position where you are no longer playing the game of power. You are designing it. The first requirement of becoming untouchable is emotional invulnerability. Not numbness, not coldness, but mastery. Emotional invulnerability means you feel everything but reveal nothing. It means emotions pass through you, but they do not control you. It means no insult destabilizes you, no flattery blinds you, no provocation manipulates you, and no failure breaks you. Most people can be controlled through emotion, fear, ego, insecurity, desire, or anger. But when you sever the link between your emotions and your reactions, you become someone others cannot predict or manipulate. Machiavelli understood that the strongest minds are not emotionless. They are emotionally untouchable. They choose their responses, instead of reacting instinctively. They remain calm under pressure because chaos serves their advantage. They never reveal cracks that others can widen. Another requirement of becoming untouchable is strategic identity construction. Weak identities crumble under stress. Strong identities expand under it. To become untouchable, you must decide who you are and defend that identity with consistency. You do not allow others to define you. You do not bend your values to gain approval. You do not compromise your standards to avoid discomfort. You build an identity rooted in discipline, intelligence, and self-respect, and you reinforce it through daily action. People cannot destabilize someone whose identity is self-created, self-defined, and self-contained. Machiavelli taught that the person who shapes their own identity cannot be reshaped by the world. Third requirement is mastery of silence and invisibility. Not literal silence, strategic silence. Not total invisibility, selective invisibility. Becoming untouchable means you reveal little, you speak with purpose, and you maintain mystique. When people do not know your weaknesses, they cannot exploit them. When they do not know your plans, they cannot block them. When they do not know your next move, they cannot prepare for it. Silence protects you. Mystery elevates you. Invisibility blinds your enemies while giving you full view of the terrain. Machiavelli knew that the most dangerous person in any environment is the one who sees everything yet reveals nothing, to become untouchable. You must also master indifference to external validation. Approval is the leash that controls the majority of people. They seek praise, fear, criticism, crave acceptance, and collapse under judgment. But Machiavelli understood that power belongs to the one who does not need permission to exist. When you no longer live for others' reactions, you break the psychological chains that bind most people. You stop explaining yourself. You stop defending your choices. You stop justifying your ambitions. Your self-worth becomes internal, not borrowed. And the person who needs nothing from others is the hardest to manipulate. Another essential layer of becoming untouchable is the ability to walk away. Detachment is power. The willingness to walk away from relationships, opportunities, arguments, or environments that compromise your strength makes you unpredictable and unexploitable. People lose control when they fear loss. They gain control when they accept loss as a strategic tool. Machiavelli recognized that the one who cares less holds more power, not because they lack emotion, but because they refuse to be imprisoned by fear. When you are willing to leave the table, you negotiate from strength. When you are willing to lose someone, you stop tolerating disrespect. When you are willing to sacrifice short-term comfort, you gain long-term advantage. Becoming untouchable also requires mastery of perception. The reality you project is often more important than the reality itself. People respond to appearances, confidence, calmness, discipline, intelligence, and certainty. When you shape perception intentionally, you shape how others treat you. They defer to you. They respect you. They fear disappointing you. They hesitate to challenge you. Machiavelli believed that shaping perception is not deception. It is self-defense. It is protecting your power by controlling the narrative others use to interpret your actions. Another step in this evolution is building internal leverage. Most people are controlled externally by bosses, partners, friends, society, insecurity, fear. To become untouchable, you must build leverage from within. Skills, intelligence, financial capability, independence, emotional discipline, and strategic thinking. Internal leverage makes you adaptable in any environment. If you lose one opportunity, you can create another. If someone withdraws support, you can support yourself. If the world shifts, you evolve with it. Dependence creates vulnerability. Independence creates untouchability. A further requirement is understanding human nature so deeply that nothing surprises you. Betrayal does not surprise you. Weakness does not surprise you. Hypocrisy does not surprise you. Jealousy does not surprise you. Most people crumble because they expect others to behave ideally. But Machiavellians expect people to behave realistically. When you understand human nature without illusion, you stop taking things personally. You see motives, not betrayals. You see fear disguised as anger. You see insecurity disguised as arrogance. You see manipulation disguised as kindness. This awareness shields you. It prevents emotional damage. It gives you clarity that others lack. To become untouchable, you must also master controlled unpredictability. Predictable people are easy to attack. They telegraph their next move. They reveal their desires. They show their insecurities. But the person who is slightly unpredictable, not chaotic, but unreadable, creates caution in others. They force people to reevaluate, hesitate, and adapt. This hesitation gives you power. Machiavelli taught that unpredictability disrupts other strategies while strengthening your own. When no one can map your next step, your enemies lose their footing. Your allies respect your strength, and your rivals fear your silence. Another key principle is forgiving without forgetting. Forgiveness removes emotional burden. Forgetting removes strategic wisdom. Machiavelli believed that memories are tools, lessons encoded in pain, insight, and pattern recognition. Becoming untouchable means you do not hold grudges, but you do not erase lessons. You remember who crossed you, who used you, who lied, who envied, who tried to control you. Not to retaliate, but to remain aware. Memory protects you from repeating mistakes. Awareness protects you from exploitation. Forgiveness cleanses your heart. Memory sharpens your mind. Another step is developing an unbreakable long-term mindset. People who think short-term react impulsively. They panic, overcommit, attach emotionally, or collapse at the first sign of struggle. Long-term thinkers evaluate, observe, plan, and endure. They understand that time is a weapon. They are patient when needed, decisive when required, and calculating always. They are impossible to rush, impossible to intimidate, and impossible to manipulate through urgency. Machiavelli understood that the one who manages time manages events. The one who manages events manages outcomes, and the one who manages outcomes manages power. Finally, becoming untouchable is not about dominating others. It is about mastering yourself. The greatest threats to your power are internal: ego, insecurity, emotional impulses, naive trust, fear of rejection, uncontrolled anger, and lack of discipline. When you eliminate these weaknesses, you become a fortress. Others may try to provoke you, you remain calm. They may try to manipulate you, you see through it. They may try to mislead you, you analyze it. They may try to intimidate you, you do not move. They may try to control you, you do not yield. Untouchable does not mean unbeatable. It means unshakable. To think like Machiavelli is to rise above the level of ordinary human behavior. To see motives where others see kindness. To see patterns where others see chaos. To see leverage where others see vulnerability. To see opportunity where others see threat. When you become untouchable, you no longer chase power. Your presence becomes power. Your silence becomes power. Your decisions become power. Your identity becomes power. This final evolution is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is not theatrical. It is quiet strength, calm awareness, unshakable strategy, and an internal solidity that the world cannot penetrate. When you reach this state, you become the kind of person Machiavelli envisioned: a mind sharpened by strategy, a presence strengthened by self-mastery, and an individual who moves through the world not as a participant in the game of power, but as the architect of it.